Just over 3 years ago, in 2014, Nintendo released one of the best collaborations between disparate franchises in gaming history, Hyrule Warriors. There were a lot of things that shocked with that release, but what probably stood out the most was just how well The Legend of Zelda and Koei-Tecmo's Warriors series fit together. On top of having a lot of loving and subtle references to the Zelda series, we also had the tightest and most refined gameplay in any Warriors game yet. After proving themselves with a stellar first entry into what we can only call the Nintendo Warriors franchise, the two companies have come together a second time to try to capture lightning in a bottle again with Fire Emblem Warriors, releasing for both the Nintendo Switch and new Nintendo 3DS systems. Fire Emblem Warriors starts by having you choose your protagonist, either Rowan or Liana, who are respectively Prince and Princess of the Atolus Kingdom. Soon into the opening, their castle is attacked by creatures appearing from dark portals throughout the kingdom, and after being entrusted with a mysterious fire shield and fleeing the castle, they start a journey to gather strength to retake their home while also collecting power from various legendary heroes which they recruit. For spoiler reasons, I won't be saying any more about the story than that, but the story mode, which consists of more than 20 missions, proceeds episodically as you meet characters from Fire Emblem Awakening, Fire Emblem Fates, and Fire Emblem Shadow Dragon, the 3 games that make up the most of Fire Emblem Warriors cast. A quick note, I recommend playing the story mode on hard right off the bat, as the normal mode is quite easy. It's simple to see how the Fire Emblem franchise is a natural fit for the Warriors series. Similar to Dynasty Warriors, Fire Emblem games involve intense battles with a lot of epic moments, amazing heroes, and legendary weapons. However, this game is not just Dynasty Warriors with Fire Emblem painted over it. The Nintendo Warriors games definitely have a unique feel when put next to any of the other numerous Warriors franchises. So let's go ahead and get right into the gameplay. A standard battle consists of you taking on hordes of enemies on a massive battlefield with your selected hero, with you being required to defend your bases and allies while also defeating key enemy generals, taking enemy bases, or fulfilling certain conditions which open the way to the opposing army's home base and commander for you to defeat. This is par for the course for any Warriors game, but added into this is a much heavier emphasis on strategy and countering, which is fitting of a Fire Emblem entry. Right away, I am happy to say that finally, after proving to be such a critical feature in making Hyrule Warriors Legends for 3DS a superior experience to its original version, multiple hero picking and active character switching have made it into a console Warriors game. For almost every battle, you will not be selecting a single hero, you will be selecting 4. After assembling your team and starting the battle, you simply press up or down to instantly switch over to one of your other characters, while your previous character will become AI controlled. By default, your character's AI actions are governed by an aggressive or defensive playstyle, which can be toggled by you in the menu. However, this time around, there is a much greater incentive to actively order your heroes around. In Hyrule Warriors Legends, this system in its infancy was a little bit clunky. It was a slow process to dig into menus and arrange these details, and though you could get your heroes where you wanted them to go, they basically required immediate direct oversight when they arrived in order for them to accomplish anything. I was very pleased to see that ordering in Fire Emblem Warriors has been made a lot more streamlined. You simply select your soldier on the pause screen and drag them to where you want them to go, with a contextual menu appearing to easily allow you to choose what you want them to do when they get there, either attack, defend, or otherwise. However, on top of this, something that I was extremely shocked by was that your allies are actually reliable. Unless I was sending my hero into very unfavorable odds, they were able to capture keeps I targeted or reliably kill enemy generals I wanted them to get rid of all on their own. Your allies, and by extension your enemies, are not the same passive robots that plagued the games of the past. And with this improvement, the whole game system is sharpened by one of the best carryovers from the Fire Emblem franchise, which is the countering mechanic. Simply put, there are 5 weapon types that every character in this game, friend or foe, are going to use: sword, axe, spear, bow, and magic book. There is one outlier in the cast, but for everyone else, these are the weapons to pick from. Unlike in a Fire Emblem game, each character can only use one of these types of weapons, at least at launch. And what weapon they use determines not only how they perform against enemies, but also how they fare defensively. The big 3 weapons in this system are sword, axe, and spear, which form a rock, paper, scissors-like triangle of effectiveness. Sword counters axe, axe counters spear, and spear counters sword. Bow and magic book sit on the outside of this triangle, with them being more general, all-purpose weapons that have much less of a sharp edge against your enemies, but can at least be reasonably useful regardless of what you're going up against. There are a few extra layers to keep things interesting, such as the case of bow versus flying mount, which is the only critical counter in the whole game. Bows will shred flying mounted enemies and stun them with every minor shot, which justifies its slightly less general effectiveness when compared to magic book. This whole countering mechanic works brilliantly with the new emphasis on setting up a balanced team of 4 in most battles, and proves a point that fans of this series have been saying for years. Warriors games, despite the reputation as button mashers, actually do require a lot of strategy and execution. For these games, the most difficult challenges do not really come from intense one-on-one fighting mechanics for you to master, but instead from being able to intelligently apply your strength in the right place at the right time. And through adding this weapon countering mechanic, there is a deeper layer of strategy here than ever before. This all starts out on the map screen before you load into a battle, which is now also the character selection screen, where you need more than ever before to study your enemy's placements and equipment prior to the battle. In order to make your choices simpler, the game uses these arrow markers on enemy generals to demonstrate quickly if you have an advantage or disadvantage in a fight, something that really helped me to learn all of the matchups very quickly. It's a breeze to quickly form up a team that should be balanced enough to take on all threats. However, be aware that in some battles, new enemy types can appear that you may not be ready for with a heavily weighted team that only looked good at the start of the match, meaning that you should almost always keep things balanced. Because more difficult challenge in this game can be answered by simply employing more intricate strategies, the grinding of single characters as your main out of necessity has become much less of an issue than ever before. There is another layer to picking your team this time around, and that is through yet another great Fire Emblem franchise carryover, the pair-up system. When getting close to one of your allies, you are able to pair up with them, and if they were one of your controllable 4 heroes, you are able to easily swap between who you're controlling, something which is actually done so fast that you can change in the middle of hitting your foe without missing a beat. When paired up, your character's stats will be improved, with different stats improving based on who you teamed up with. An axe user, for example, may benefit your strength more. However, a magic user might help out your magic defense. Then, just like in the Fire Emblem games, when fighting together and defeating important enemies, your 2 paired heroes' affinity levels will begin to increase, first going to C, B, and then A, and even A+ for certain pair-ups. Quick note here, there are no S matchups, so unfortunately you won't be making any baby warriors to add to the cast. While paired up, 2 extra mechanics will build up as you attack your enemies, and those are the dual attack and dual defense gauges, which refill faster if you have a higher affinity with your partner. With your dual defense gauge fully charged, the first single attack that you take next will have its damage fully negated, which can be quite the difference maker when taking on challenges that are beyond your level, or when you're dealing with enemies that have attacks that are just really hard to time your dodges against. This is a nice change to the combat, but as the effect is automatic, it doesn't really alter how you play. However, the other side of these pair-up enhancements, dual attack, is a lot more important and game-changing. With this gauge charged, you are able to summon in your partner for a single quick attack. Unless their weapon is naturally ineffective against your foe, this attack will always make your enemy's stun gauge appear, which is a defense bar for you to break through with quick attacks, and if successful, it allows you to unleash a heavily damaging weak point attack on them. Unlike in Hyrule Warriors, which required you to be passive in order to make your enemy's weak point appear, both the countering system of this game and this brilliant dual attack mechanic have altered the gameplay to give you a much more aggressive and enjoyable way to decimate your foe. Pairing up 2 heroes is also the way to unlock the most powerful attacks in the game, which are the dual special attacks. While paired up and while each hero has a special attack ready, when utilized, your secondary character will knock all nearby enemies into the air, while your lead hero will unleash an extremely powerful and flashy attack which will destroy your enemies. This mechanic gives an extra layer of choosing who to pair up with, as well as switching often between them in order to have this nuke of an attack fully charged, while while also encouraging you not to waste your specials while solo unless you really need to. After playing some Fire Emblem games in anticipation for Fire Emblem Warriors, I was excited for how the countering mechanic would play out here. However, I was not ready for just how much the pair-up mechanic would change the gameplay for the better. And to me, it is probably the best unexpected improvement to this franchise. You need to apply its use carefully, as pairing up two of your warriors can sometimes backfire in times when you need all of your heroes in different places doing different things at once, or by having one of your counters become less effective because he or she is playing backup to another hero. But this is a mechanic that I hope stays in the Nintendo Warriors franchise from here on out, regardless of the game. Well, I have just spent over 1,500 words simply describing how these Fire Emblem series mechanics flavor the combat, so I guess I should go ahead and get to the most anticipated part of the game, with that being the actual characters and playstyles. Before I go any further on this, however, I feel it's only right to drop a spoiler warning here. I personally spent a lot of time in this last week, and even one nearly sleepless night, in order to unlock every character in the game. So I really want to talk about who they are and what they do without any restraint. So if you have been avoiding playstyle or cast information, please skip to the timestamp on screen. Okay, 3, 2, 1. The first thing that you need to learn about and accept is that unlike Hyrule Warriors, Fire Emblem Warriors has clones. Of the 23 playable characters that are in this game at launch, there are actually only 15 unique playstyles to be had. The sword users Rowan and Liana play the same, as do Chrom and Lucina, and Marth and Celica. All three Pegasus Knights, Cordelia, Hinoka, and Sita, play exactly the same. All three archers, Sakura, Takumi, and Anna, play the same too, as well as the mounted magic users Leo and Elise. To be clear, these are 14 characters out of a total cast of 23, amounting to just 6 true unique movesets between them. The only variety to be found from one clone to another comes from their special attacks, which target enemies differently and are cosmetically unique, as well as their character stats, which mainly alters their regular attack speed and damage per hit. The remaining 9 characters all have playstyles that are completely unique to them, with this group consisting of Corrin, Ryoma, Xander, Camilla, Robin, Lissa, Frederick, Tiki, and Lyn. For comparison, at launch, Hyrule Warriors had about 21 unique playstyles, or 22 depending on how you count the Master Sword. It's pretty embarrassing that the developers of this game boasted about Fire Emblem Warriors launching with a bigger cast than ever before, whilst also failing to mention that 8 of them were clones. However, despite this sounding like it's all building up to a criticism, I am actually quite forgiving to the developers on this disparity. Unlike Hyrule Warriors, every single one of these 15 fighting styles is great. At the time of writing, I have just come from putting together my picks for the top 10 best and top 10 worst weapons of Hyrule Warriors. So when playing the different styles here, I naturally asked myself how I would order them. And ultimately, I came to the conclusion that just none of them are bad, and none of them are that much better than the others. Thankfully, there are no obvious stinkers or playstyles that clearly didn't have a lot of thought put into them. While it doesn't sound great to say that there are only 15 playstyles with a lot of clones, what needs to be understood is that this is a matter of quality over quantity. While I did enjoy all of the playstyles by the end of Hyrule Warriors, there were really only a handful that I actually loved. I already love all of the styles in this game, with my favorites likely being Lyn's sword style, the 3 archers, and Robin. On top of different playstyles and weapons, there is also a certain amount of variety in how your character is mounted, which also gives them different running speeds. All of the ground-based characters, for example, feel extremely tight and responsive, with perfect dodge controls that make them ideal for important duels. Next up, the horse-mounted characters, despite what I'm sure are a lot of fears from prospective players, actually do still feel quite tight and responsive, with the extra addition of running attacks and generally a more area-focused playstyle. There is actually a variety of running speeds in these characters, with heavily armored fighters like Frederick moving quite a bit slower on horseback than the mages, for instance. Finally, the fastest mounted characters of them all are the 3 Pegasus Knights. This playstyle is wild and will likely take a long time for many players to get used to. It certainly took me a while myself. These 3 characters don't have any true dodges, and they're not meant to dig into a single fight for too long. Their attacks and excessive moving speed simply make them move forward too much. This was very off-putting to me at first, however, once I learned to adopt more hit-and-run style tactics, I found the potential in this highly mobile option. The differences between mounts is also something to take into consideration when planning your teams, because the dueling up system encourages you to sometimes bring a mounted character along just for their mobility. Some of the hardest missions in the game for me were made much simpler by simply letting my Cordelia taxi my Rowan around to critical spots on the battlefield, where after decimating my enemy with him, I would then have her fly me to the next general or area in need of help. All the characters in this game, regardless of class, weapon, or mount, do not have access to their full movesets right away, which is actually pretty par for the course in many Warriors games. However, Fire Emblem Warriors takes this a step further by requiring you to invest a rare item into your character's badge sheets to invoke a class change, along with shiny new armor, which is purely an aesthetic change and functions more like a character skin which can be reversed if you want, as well as a huge stat boost which sometimes doubles your strength. This so-called class change doesn't actually change their playstyle in any way at all. However, be aware that this step is needed in order to unlock the badges that can let you use their full standard attack string and their final combo. The items needed to change your character's classes are called Master Seals, and they come from specific challenges in the game, with the entire story mode itself only providing you with 6 total. The other 17 of these seals come from the game's other main section, History Mode. Veterans of Hyrule Warriors will understand that the story mode of the game is really just the first 20 hours of the experience. The other 500 hours came from Adventure Mode. It's fair to say that Fire Emblem Warriors History Mode is the Adventure Mode equivalent, but happily it has been much improved. Taking place on famous battles from the series' history, challenges are represented by enemies on the field. On top of giving you an idea of what kind of enemy will be prevalent in that challenge based on the sprite, these fights finally have a very clear level associated with them. A somewhat limiting factor of the old Adventure Mode was that by design, it had to have an overwhelmingly large amount of mini challenges. This required the invention of some more questionably designed game types, such as the mini quizzes, every hit is critical types, and defeat 3 enemies in a keep series of battles, which I feel were mainly there just to take up space. Thankfully, this whole extra mode, just like with the character roster, also takes the approach of quality over quantity. There are no item cards to grind for, and there are no obviously underdesigned challenges. Each of these maps also has a little story associated with it, with more enemies coming in to fill up the map quite sufficiently before the end of it. Upon completing a map, drastically more difficult challenges will then appear that give you a reason to return later on, once you have sufficiently leveled up or met their own requirements for play. These requirements can include getting a perfect rating on each of the challenges on that map, or at least finishing all of the fights on that map just once. Once again, this is the mode that the majority of your playtime with the game can be spent in, and I believe that the incentive of unlocking more Master Seals to class change your heroes and completing their movesets, while also getting the 3 secret non-story mode characters and 2 alternate gender skins, is a great incentive to sink your teeth further into this game after you finish the story. A quick note regarding those 3 secret characters, by the way: go for Lyn first and take your time getting Celica and Anna. Lyn's playstyle is amazing and well worth it. However, Celica and Anna are clones. Don't get me wrong, they are well worth getting eventually, but just don't rush it like I did. Also, don't play this mode with 2 players if you're trying to get perfect ranks on everything. The lessened enemies on screen makes it incredibly frustrating when trying to get your KO goals. And now, having covered almost every aspect of the game, what I have left to say about it are really just little minor points of either praise or criticism that I wasn't really sure where to put once this monster of a script was fully completed. So getting into it, first of all, I just want to say that I love how enemy materials are now instantly collected without the illusion of you needing to actually pick them up as in Hyrule Warriors. It wasn't actually the case there that you had to collect them, but they did clutter up the battlefield and played an overly enthusiastic jingle with everyone that you touched. That is not the case here, and the little tune that plays when they're automatically collected is much less intrusive. On a similar subject, the number of weapons that you can hold now before needing to sell some off is also vastly increased. You can now hold up to 100 swords, axes, spears, bows, magic books, and crystals each. This is also benefited by weapons no longer being wholly unique to the character, meaning that with a larger stock of weapons available to multiple people, it is now much easier to work towards grabbing the perfect abilities for your weapon build without requiring an unreasonable amount of uncertain grinding. Now, on the negative side, the level up notifications in this game are a bit too much. Early in the game, especially if you make a brief aside to the history mode once it's unlocked, you could sometimes see up to 4 level up notifications in the same 2 minutes of gameplay. Once once level ups have become less frequent later in the game, this is much less of an issue, except for the fact that your game is still paused to inform you of level ups to other characters that are on the same field as you, even if you're not actually controlling them at the time. Fortunately, this intrusive little notification can be turned off in the menu, so at the very least, it's up to you. Going back on the positive side, I love that your team members who you selected but aren't actually controlling at the time do have their AI kills contribute to your final rating in history mode. So please remember to actually check the map screen often. When you move your marker off a character and onto empty land, you can actually see what your real total KO number is. This can let you know if it is okay or not to end the battle early, and overall will save you a ton of time. Also, I really like how character healing has been changed to require you to bring along healing items for others if an ally is going to be critically wounded. This adds yet another layer into building a good balanced team, which I'm always in favor of, and is a big improvement on the ridiculous free touch healing from Hyrule Warriors. Going negative again, I really have to ask what they were thinking with the repeated voice lines when buying badges in the shop. Every time you get a new character, which can sometimes be 3 at once in certain story mode missions, you are going to be treated to a chorus of repeated voice lines as you get all of their many low-level bronze badges out of the way. This is a temporary thing and not really a huge deal, but in my opinion, there should never be a reason out of my control for me to want to mute the game temporarily. Last of all, in a combination positive and negative point, there are no more giant bosses that you'll have to fight again and again and again. There is only one boss, which is strictly used at the end of the story mode and in the final battles for each history mode map. Unfortunately, this boss is absolutely terrible and is a slog of a fight, even when you are completely over-leveled for the mission at hand. No video of this boss will be shown for spoiler reasons, so the only advice I can say is to bring along all your characters to the fight and use every dual special you have available. With Hyrule Warriors, Koei-Tecmo proved themselves as one of the few companies who truly understood what post-launch support really means. Not only was there great DLC later on that brought incredible value for the price, but there were also heaps of free DLC content, and this is something that I fully expect in Fire Emblem Warriors. Currently, the biggest hole in this entire game is the lack of a ground-based spear playstyle. There is at least one recurring NPC in the story mode, Oboro from Fire Emblem Fates, who already uses a spear in this way, and would be a prime candidate to be added, for free I hope, to the playable roster. I can only hope that viewers in the future can comment to tell me that this has already happened. Even though this game, like Hyrule Warriors, is sure to be an ongoing experience for players in the coming months as free and paid DLC trickles in, at launch, there isn't a doubt in my mind that it is already more than worth it. I can only give this game my highest recommendation, and if you enjoyed Hyrule Warriors, you will likely adore this game as much as I did. If you only like Fire Emblem, then I say you should probably still pick it up, as you're likely to enjoy the strategy mechanics of the series adapted masterfully into this battlefield action game. Honestly, I think that even if you aren't a fan of Fire Emblem or simply ignorant of the series as I was, you're still likely to really enjoy this game. At the end of the day, Fire Emblem Warriors is an incredibly well-designed game. I have put over 40 hours of my time into it in the last week, beating the story on hard, unlocking and class upgrading every character, getting extensive time with every moveset, and completing every history mode map. And I have loved nearly every minute. The story mode is a treat, and the new strategies carried over from the Fire Emblem franchise fit the series perfectly. The characters and the playstyles, despite the clones, are all strong and extremely fun to utilize, and history mode is an outstanding post-game incentive, as well as being a perfect fit for either of the handheld systems that this is launching for. I am extremely grateful, both as a content creator and as a gamer, that I was able to get a Switch thanks to many amazing fans who sponsored its purchase. Thank you so much to everybody who donated to my campaign and made this review possible, and you can be sure that there will be a lot of further content to come on my channel for this amazing game. So, in anticipation for that, be sure to subscribe to my channel if you haven't and hit that notification bell so that you can be informed when those later videos come out. Until next time everybody, this has been GamesBrained, thank you so much for watching, and as always, I hope you take care.